This podcast is brought to you by our supporters on patreon.com and coffee.com. Our supporters are the backbone of the podcast, and we are very thankful for all of you. Your contributions allow us to seek the best ideas and disruptors in the world and bring you podcasts that energize, transform, and change your community. We hope you take courage and join our one-time contributors through coffee.com or our monthly ones on patreon.com. You'll get amazing merch and early access to our unedited interviews and produced podcasts. If you want to contribute, hit the links in the description below. And thank you.
About a month ago, Society got a re-release of what I consider to be the best animated movie of all time. A movie so transcendental that drove millions to go watch a talking lion die by a stampede again. They saw hyenas laugh awkwardly, and young Simba return to take his rightful place as king of the jungle. I'm sure that most of you have watched the animated 1994 version of Lion King, and probably some of you will go and watch this classic again in the cinema. People will watch it again. And again. And again. The critic reviews will come in, and the fan reviews will come in as well. And as they do, Christians are still waiting to develop a movie that has touched the masses with the same power, that drives them to go watch and rewatch and continue to watch the same movie. Yet, I thought that that's what digital era the mission field was supposed to be, right? Or is it not? Is it still a valid mission field?
Wow, absolutely. Number one, it can be a mission field. And I feel like that has to do a lot with an individual person as well and how they relate to people. I've considered myself a bit of a missionary, like literally just because you do friendship ministry around you. You know, it's people who traditionally you would feel like, hey, you're not supposed to be friends with these types of people. And you do have to recognize what your boundaries are. You do have to have a core set of people who you go to refresh your spirituality and to keep you solid, and you need to drink from that well often. But you also need to be there. Our whole entire point on this earth as missionaries, you know, the Great Commission, you're supposed to go out. You're supposed to be the salt of the earth, not the salt lick. And not everybody's going to come to you. But as somebody, and this is true for anybody, not just media, you know, as a mechanic, as somebody who cooks, as somebody who, yes, builds houses or is a CPA somewhere in a stuffy little office, you know, there are going to be people around you that will or will not be drawn to you based on, you know, like, what's your spirit? Is your friendship life-giving? Is it something that somebody will look at you and just be like, wow, there's something different about them and they're peaceful and I want to know why, because that's not my life, you know, like that kind of thing. But so as an individual, most definitely, I feel like that really needs to be a thing. I feel that, you know, that's kind of an in general thing. For media, again, absolutely. It is a wild disservice what we are doing. If you look at where all the eyes are, where are they? They're on Netflix, they're on HBO, they're on all of these places. If you look at the history of our church and how old they were what, 18 to 23, something like that, 17 to 23. And they were using the most cutting edge ways of getting in front of people that they had at that time. And we've stayed there. I remember being close to, in proximity to a meeting that was going on at the GC, and there was a vote up on whether or not to get a great controversy in every single home in America. And just doing some quick math, some approximate quick math, that might be, what, $300 million. And you think about the kind of epic story that you could tell on film that would reach an infinite amount of people that, you know, because, like, unfortunately, people don't read these days. It's an awful thing that does need to be corrected for sure. People need to read more. but we also need to meet people where they're at as well.
Our guest today on Disruptive Adventism, Tanya Musgrave, and as you heard her, we'll be speaking about digital media, audiovisuals, and how to reach others through it. When I asked her what is her perception of Christian media, she told me it was, and I quote, icky. So I decided to go further and ask her, what do we need for Christian media to not be icky?
Well, I feel like we need experience, and to have experience, we need support. Any of the early missionaries going to a foreign country, they had the support of the church. You know, you had somebody going to figure out what the culture was like, what they could do in order to reach a certain audience. Everything in filmmaking is about the audience. Just like, okay, all right, who is it that we're talking to? You know, I had a filmmaker say, you know, Christian media is kind of the only thing out there with an identity crisis. So you look at ESPN, it's for people who like sports. You look for people, you know, that really, really dig anything having to do with sports. What about History Channel? It's for people who like history. Now, for church media, supposedly it's to appeal to the outside world. And it is extremely and painfully obvious that they have no idea how to reach people of the outside world. And so, you know, if you don't have the support of your church, what else are you supposed to do except to just go out and do it on your own? And that's why we have so many independent little endeavors that can't afford to do something actually good. You know, you don't have, I mean, movies, unfortunately, they cost a lot. You know, you're looking at $3 to $5 million for a very low budget film. That's kind of a good starting point. A decently done one. They did Record Keeper for, I think, about $1 million. And so, you know, it's even, that was micro budget for what they could have done with it. You know, I don't know the exact budget for Hacksaw Ridge. $40 million. That was their budget. That was just their production budget. So production budget is one thing, but then you have marketing and distribution and all that stuff, which is usually another 40 million or so. So I'm just saying it costs a lot to do this. So yeah, the church needs to hire artists, number one. And number two, they need to trust them to do their job. So many times I have created something and they're just like, oh, no. And they get really nervous because she has a tank top on, you know, that kind of thing. And you're just like, oh, Lance, do you know your audience? Do you know that your audience wears tank tops? You know what I mean? Do you know that? And so, I mean, it gets really gray. It does. But the issue is that there's not even a conversation. It's us versus them. It's very polarized. There's no conversation going on between the different generations. And the thing is that we need both, like, we need each other. We need the older generation. And, you know, we need some roots to make sure that we're not going crazy or, you know, whatever, what have you. You know, we need the wisdom of the older generation, but the older generation needs to realize that the younger generation is usually quite up on the current tactics to reach the people of the world. I mean, it's, or at least reach our generation. If you want to reach the younger generation, ask them. That's the thing. You know, I've had some people say, okay, all right, well, I put out a survey of what YouTube videos young people are watching today. And all the young people say, all right, this is what I'm watching. This is what I'm watching. And then the older generation will look at that list and just be like, oh, they don't know what they want. You know, like it doesn't matter what they say because there's no way they could be watching stuff like this. Way. It's very, very possible.
As Tanya said, way. And after the break, we cover what are some of the things that people are watching and how to reach them better. Thank you for listening to Disruptive Adventism. See you after the break. You have an idea. You want to tell it to the world, but you don't know where to start. That's where Anchor comes in. They have the tools for you to edit, produce, and record your idea right from your phone or computer. It's the easiest way to reach and grow your audience. They publish for you to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major platforms. And to top it all off, they match you with advertisers so you can earn from your passion and your wonderful idea. So tell me, what are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started and follow your dream. Today on Disruptive Adventism, we're talking about media. Thank you for listening. If you want to get the unedited conversation, go to patreon.com/Disruptive Adventism. As we continue progress talking with Tanya, another question was, what's good filmmaking? How do you determine what's good and what's not?
If you think about good filmmaking, and this makes a little bit of sense once you know a couple of things from filmmaking and from just kind of looking at the big picture. Okay, everything about evangelical Christianity is about telling the gospel, correct? Everything about film is about showing and not telling, because nobody likes to be assumed that they're a dumb audience. So the people who are just like, well, wait, and they put together all of the pieces for you in the film, and you're just like, I could have figured that out on my own. Why are you saying this? Why are you assuming that I couldn't figure this out myself? Or something along the lines of, it's just cheesy. It's cheesy and on the nose, and you're like, okay, well, why did they have to say that? Why did they have to narrate that certain thing or have this obligatory scene? Or, it's just like, everything about film is about showing and not telling. And when you have that kind of dichotomy, you have to realize that for the sake of filmmaking, or for the sake of a well-told story, sometimes you have to adapt your story. Not saying adapting the truth. I'm saying adapt the story, like the script, and say like, okay, it can be a better script, but generally speaking, you don't have enough money to work with in order to get a decent script writer. You see what I mean? It's a catch-22. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of good resources. Sometimes, at least inside the church. Inside the church, usually what people do is they kind of stick to their alumni. They stick to their alumni who have kind of gone out and tried to bumble around for 10 years. Southern's program is relatively new if you think about film programs around the country. But it is probably the oldest, or one of the oldest, and I still remember. I'm within a generation, not a generation. I am within 4 years of the beginning of that whole entire program. So it is relatively new. It's not like the business program or the nursing program that's been around for years. And so a lot of times people just kind of stick to their alumni and ask them. They bumble around for 10 years, not knowing what to do or not where to go. They might go to LA, and they, like for instance, we have a good solid group there that, they've been able to form a bit of a community out there that can guide some new coming filmmakers. But that is also a very specific type of film. That's narrative or commercial. What if you don't want to go to Hollywood? What if you want to go rural? What if you want to stay in Atlanta? What do? We don't really have an Atlanta hub. A lot of times in the church, it is, unfortunately, if you wanted to work in some sort of media, sometimes you might be able to find a church job, or maybe like at the GC or at a conference office, but I guarantee you there's going to be some desires to just bang your head against the wall, because a lot of the times it seems like your opinion is neither wanted nor appreciated. And it's a very hard conversation to have. I would have this conversation daily, almost daily, with a person. When I worked at the GC, I was there for about 6 months, and there are amazing people there. I'm not gonna knock that. I learned a lot, and it was great, except for the fact that when I would create stuff, it was very difficult to get anywhere. And I would have this conversation with somebody else who was my own age there. And I'm just like, why are we doing this? Are we going to bang our heads against the wall for decades trying to inch this along? Or are we just going to try to do this ourselves? You know, and, you know, the question would always come up, well, if not us, then who? Because who else is wanting, you know, like very, very few of my friends who are in the film industry have any desire to work in or for the church. And I think that's really sad, because sometimes those are the ones who have the best abilities. You know, like, what if they have the ability, but they just have no desire to work for the church? Well, why is that?
And that from Tanya is an excellent question. Why is it that our Adventist creatives are not working for the church? Why is it that Christian creatives have to go outside? What are the challenges that they're facing? Tanya had this to share with me.
You know, when it comes to these things, like, like when it comes down to the numbers, like financing your film, the business plan, the marketing and the distribution, there isn't, unfortunately, a lot having to do with that. And, you know, you'll see this in Hollywood all the time. Like, a good movie gets made, but they have no money for marketing and distribution, and the movie dies. I was, you know, even if it's a well done movie or a, you know, like what have you, if it doesn't have the funds to put it out there in front of people, people aren't going to go and see it. And that is something that happens all the time, you know, just because when I was at the GC, unfortunately, it felt like, all right, if it's in existence and on YouTube, that means that tons of people are going to come and watch it. It's not true. You know, it's not like, just because it exists does not mean that people are watching it. And not only, I mean, and you could have all the appeal that you want, but if you have no know-how when it comes to marketing and distributing it, like, all right, well, how do I get this in front of people? Do I do Facebook ads? Do I do AdSense? Do I do AdWords? You know, that kind of thing. Or do I do an Instagram live? Do I get influencers involved with this? Like, how do I get them to promote it? How do I talk to podcasters about this? You know, that kind of thing. And it's a constantly fluctuating strategy, because it's a constantly fluctuating market. There are tons of influencers out there that will say, oh yeah, I've got, 1.5 million subscribers, or I've got like 10 million subscribers. And, they talk about how they got there. Well, for film and for particularly narrative film or what have you, there aren't necessarily those influencers that are saying, okay, well, yeah, here are all of our cards. Here, take from all of our cards and like go make a movie. No, there's still a little bit of that exclusivity and, how and where do you network and, that kind of thing.
Those challenges, not impossible to overcome. After the break, we talk about a little bit of the vision that Tanya would like to see in our church and Christianity working together in media. Thank you for listening. We'll be right back.
Producing content, not easy. Creating a business plan to reach the masses, even harder. That's why Good To Go Media is hosting Collab Media and Film in Redlands, California, this September 8 and 9, where you, the content creator, can learn all about business plans, distribution, legal guidelines, and more. Presenters like Mark Butler and Randy Jameson will walk you through the tough parts of the content creation process. And if you need a financial boost for your project, the event is having a pitch competition where you can receive a prize of up to $20,000 to bring your ideas to life. Go to goodtogomedia.org to register and use code DISRUPTIVE for 20% off your ticket. Again, goodtogomedia.org, discount code DISRUPTIVE.
Last segment of Disruptive Adventism on media and creativity today with Tanya Musgrave. If you're a creative, remember to sign up for Collab Media with code DISRUPTIVE. As we finalize this episode, I asked Tanya, why did she join the creative community?
I kind of bumbled my way into film. I don't know how. I still don't know how I ended up there, but there are some filmmakers that, they were cutting their own music videos when they were 8. They're like jumping around in their backyard or making living room types of films and, like that kind of thing. And that was never me. I didn't even know how to edit until like, my second half of college career, but I always loved the behind the scenes of filmmaking. I loved good stories. I loved being able to watch movies with my parents. And, like there's so many different stories and so many ways that you can bring understanding and empathy through characters on screen where, people who are not usually understood, their story is now accessible through movie, I think there are countless stories that would cause people to think twice and pause and contemplate because of a movie. And there aren't as many opportunities in, say, books and articles and, some of them slightly more outdated forms of communication. And so, yeah, for right now, and I am also a sucker for visuals. I love just gorgeous lighting and visuals. I'm a photographer as well, so I don't know, I really enjoy the visual aspect of filmmaking. But I love the collaboration. It's very much a family kind of atmosphere and a team. And yeah, it's an incredible community to be a part of. I think there's something innate with any artist. There's something innate within any artist. They're creative, so they have to create. That's just what you do,
So today we've seen artists, media, how to tell a story, what are the resources and challenges. But what's the vision? What's the unified vision that Tanya wants to see in the future? Those are the last words. Tanya takes us home.
I would love to see a more unified approach to creating film and media. As in, right now, because there is no support with the church, or very little, you find a lot of small, tiny little media endeavors happening around the country that can't really survive well. So, for instance, a couple of animators that I know who came straight from Disney, they worked on Moana, they worked on Tangled, they worked on all of that stuff. They're wanting to make an animation company. But can they do that without without a lot of funding? It's very hard to do that. So if there was a media company that, or at least concerted efforts to put funds towards media and media creation, to make a series on Netflix, to make a full-length feature film, what have you. I would love to see more conversation happening between our artists and our leadership, because I feel like our evangelism as we're seeing it now is dying. You might find a few here and there that come because of a revelation seminar, but it's dying if it's not already dead. We need to be able to create media that can reach a general audience. And that doesn't mean that it has to have a lot of evil and debauchery in it. You can tell a well-told story. You can tell a Hacksaw Ridge, a Remember the Titans, a, what have you. Like, you can tell good stories and still be within the mission of the church. And so I feel like if they want to further the mission, like, that conversation needs to happen between our artists, our audience as well. Like, we need to be able to talk to, like, all right, do you want to know what the young adults in this church are thinking? Then start asking. Do we want to know why our projects aren't being funded by the quote unquote old geezers of the church? Well, we need to start asking. We need to start having these conversations.
You've been listening to Disruptive Adventism. We hope that today's topic help you to think and change something about your practices, about your faith, about your Adventism. If you want to subscribe, make sure to go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcast. We'll be there. And make sure to give us a review if you like what you're listening to. If you want to support, make sure to go to patreon.com/disruptiveadventism. It helps us pay our bills and produce the content that you're listening to. And if you want to socialize, make sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram or on Twitter, and hit us up whenever you need anything. We'll be there to support you. Thank you for listening today. We hope you join us next time. And as always, we invite you to be disruptive.